Okay, let's dive right into one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of all time. Picture this, it's 1959, deep in the desolate Ural Mountains. 9 incredibly experienced hikers are on a really tough winter expedition. These weren't amateurs, they were skilled, they were prepared, but absolutely nothing could have prepared them for what was about to happen. A fate that would turn their journey into a mystery that still baffles us today.
And really, this is the question at the absolute heart of it all. It's the one thing that just doesn't make sense. Imagine being so terrified of something inside your tent that your only option, the only thing you can think to do, is to cut your way out and run for your life into a frozen nightmare. So what on earth could it have been?
And I really want you to understand the conditions we're talking about here. This wasn't just a cold night. It was minus 30 Celsius. That's minus 22 Fahrenheit. That is lethally, dangerously cold. Out there without the right gear, your survival is measured in minutes, not hours. And yet, that's what they ran out into.
So right from the jump, you've got this massive contradiction that makes no sense. On one hand, you have this act of pure desperation, slashing open your only shelter from the inside to get away. But on the other hand, you have the state their bodies were found in, scattered, far from the tent, some without even shoes on. It justifies all logic.
It took weeks for search parties to even find the campsite, and when they did, the first clues they found were right there at the abandoned tent, on the slopes of a mountain the local Mansi people call Kholat Syakhl, which ominously translates to Dead Mountain.
What's so wild about this evidence is the picture of sheer panic it paints. The fact that the tent was cut from the inside tells you the threat wasn't some animal trying to get in, it was with them. And they left everything, their warm clothes, their food, all their gear. And those footprints, they tell the story, people running for their lives, not even taking a second to put on boots in that deadly cold.
So the search party followed that trail of footprints, and that's when they started finding the bodies. But they weren't all in one place. They were found in 2 distinct groups, and the condition of each group just made the mystery even deeper and way more disturbing.
So you can see the split right here. The first group, found near this big cedar tree, seemed to have died a pretty tragic but, well, understandable death. They froze. They clearly tried to start a fire. That's why they had burned hands, but the cold just got to them. But then there's group 2, found way later, deep in a ravine. Their cause of death was something else entirely. We're talking massive, crushing internal injuries, but with almost no bruises or cuts on their skin. How is that even possible?
And this quote from the medical examiner's report. This is what blows the whole case wide open. A high-speed car crash, but they were in the middle of nowhere. There were no cars, no signs of a fight, no major external wounds. So the billion-dollar question is, what kind of force, out there in the wilderness, can hit you like a car without breaking your skin?
And the specific details of the injuries are even more horrifying. These weren't just internal. One of the women, Lyudmila Dubinyina, was found missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her lips. Others had similar awful injuries, and chests that had been completely crushed. Now, people have suggested maybe animal scavengers, but that just doesn't quite fit with all the other evidence, especially that incredible internal force.
Okay, so the case was already just baffling. A panicked escape, impossible injuries, but as investigators dug deeper, the clues started pointing towards something truly bizarre, something that an avalanche or a human attacker just couldn't explain. And this is where the story really takes a turn into high strangeness. At the funerals, family members were horrified. They said the victim's skin had this weird, deep orange tan, and their hair had turned gray. And even stranger than that, some of their clothing had traces of beta radiation on it. Where in the world would that come from out in the middle of the Ural Mountains?
And get this, it wasn't just what they found on the mountain. Miles away, a whole other group of people saw something weird in the sky on that very same night. They described these strange, glowing orange spheres moving silently over the exact area where the Dyatlov group was camped. You have to ask, is that just a coincidence, or is it directly connected?
For decades, that was just a story. But then, years later, the lead investigator himself, Lev Ivanov, finally broke his silence. He admitted that he and his team believed these spheres, these orbs, were directly responsible. But, and this is huge, he was ordered by high-level Soviet officials to shut the case down, classify everything, and completely remove any mention of these floating orbs. That sounds a lot like a cover-up.
So when you have this much bizarre, conflicting evidence, you're going to get a ton of theories. Over the decades, people have come up with dozens of explanations. But let's take a look at the 3 that you hear the most.
Okay, theory number 1 is all about the Cold War. The thinking is that the hikers accidentally stumbled upon a secret Soviet weapons test. Something like a concussion bomb or a parachute mine could create a massive shockwave which would absolutely explain the intense internal injuries without external marks. It would also explain the radiation, and maybe most importantly, why the government would be so desperate to keep it all a secret. Next up is a pretty wild scientific theory. The idea is that the specific shape of the mountain, combined with high winds, could have created a rare natural phenomenon that generates powerful infrasound. That's a sound so low humans can't hear it, but it can have intense physical and psychological effects. We're talking intense baseless panic, nausea, a feeling of dread, maybe even enough to make 9 experienced hikers tear their tent open and run into the night.
And of course, you can't talk about Dyatlov Pass without mentioning the more out there theory. The very last photo found on one of the cameras is super blurry, but some people are convinced they can see a dark, hulking figure in the snow. This has led to the theory that the group was attacked by the Menk, the local folklore equivalent of a Yeti or Bigfoot. It's definitely not the most scientific theory, but it's a huge part of the lore around this case.
So, after the investigators gathered all of this evidence, the bizarre injuries, the radiation, the witness reports of glowing spheres in the sky, what was their official conclusion? Well, the answer they gave is maybe the most mysterious part of this whole story.
That was it. That's the official verdict. A compelling natural force. I mean, what does that even mean? It is so incredibly, maybe deliberately, vague. It's like they're admitting that something powerful and extraordinary happened, but they're refusing to say what. It explains absolutely nothing, but it confirms the event was deadly and completely beyond the hikers' control.
And with that non-explanation, the case was slammed shut. The files were all gathered up, stamped top secret, and buried deep in the Soviet archive, hidden from the public for decades. You have to ask yourself, if it was really just some natural force, why the intense secrecy?
And that leaves us right back where we started. Was it a secret weapon gone wrong, a bizarre freak of nature, or something else entirely? With the key evidence locked away for so long and the original witnesses gone, the mystery of what that compelling force on Dead Mountain really was continues to be one of history's most chilling and unsolvable puzzles.